This is the YMB and BTC podcast.
Cryptocurrency decrypted.
Welcome to day 6 of the 12 days of YMB Christmas. Today we're speaking with one of our favorite guests that we've had on the show before. Mr. Jeffrey Tucker is the Chief Liberty Officer at Liberty.me, and he'll be sharing some thoughts on how Bitcoin has developed over the past year and how it can change our world. Stay tuned for some awesome insights. Your hosts are Tim Baker and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. A little bit of a special edition of the YMB and BTC podcast. We're excited to be coming up on 1 full year of podcasting, episode 52. And we're really excited today to be joined by Mr. Jeffrey Tucker. And he is they call him the Chief Liberty Officer over at Liberty.me. Thanks for joining us today, Mr. Tucker.
Yes, thank you. I'm also working very tightly with the Foundation for Economic Education, which has been delightfully supportive of Bitcoin. You know, it's been interesting to see how this has shaken itself out over the last 2 years. Free market institutes have been mostly on the sidelines on the subject of Bitcoin because a variety of reasons. It's just a complicated technology and it's come about in such a surprising way. But FEE has been really supportive of Bitcoin from the very beginning. They ran my first article on this subject in February, I think now, of 2013. And they took a real risk with that piece, and the ceiling fell in when they ran it. Everybody said, "Oh, you've fallen for a money scam. How could you do this? You know, a Ponzi scheme," and so on, right? We know all that nonsense.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously we're a Bitcoin podcast, so we absolutely love it when people are supportive of Bitcoin, and that's great. And of course, the free market makes it even better. So
yeah. Well, you know, it is a surprising technology, but I'm sure you have the same experience I have. You know, you watch it day by day. We're all interested in the progress of it. Most people don't watch Bitcoin. But what you're actually seeing, if you look closely at it, is an emergent technology that's going nowhere but up. I mean, it's by up. I don't necessarily mean in terms of the dollar exchange rate. That's anybody's guess. But just in terms of usage and the infrastructure that's being developed by the day around Bitcoin, it's really wonderful. I mean, you get a sense of what it must have been like, you know, in the early years of flight or internal combustion or electricity or some other great technology.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So much great stuff has been happening. And actually, that's kind of the main question that we want to get at today is, well, yeah, since this is a 1-year celebration kind of thing, can you just share what some of your favorite things are, innovations, growth, features, anything, just some of your favorite things from the past year, events, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything in the Bitcoin world.
Well, my favorite thing are reading stories about the death of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
It's because it's so funny. I mean, you know, these journalists enter into the Bitcoin space, you know, mostly without knowledge. There's some knowledgeable critics, but not many. And they jump all over it at the slightest little funny news that's out there, you know, whether it's, you know, the Charlie Shem being arrested or Mt. Gox going down or the price falling 10% or, you know, whatever the thing is. They're like, oh, well, Bitcoin's dead. It's really hilarious because it gives you a perspective on just how short-term oriented most commentators and observers really are. They're not really thinking about the big picture at all. Like if you read the news about railroads anywhere between 1870 and 1900, it would have been all about stock market scams and crashes and exploited workers on train lines and, you know, fraud and stock jobbing and, you know, booms and busts along railroad lines. And it would just be kind of a long news of calamity. And if you just adhered to the newspapers, you think, my God, railroads are the worst thing that ever happened in the history of the world.
Right.
It's kind of like that in the Bitcoin world, you know. It only comes to people's attention really when some when there's some big newsworthy item, which is always bad news. There's a weird thing. The big mainstream press has a kind of a penchant for bad news. They just love it. It must be depressing to be a mainstream reporter. You know, you just have to sort of sit around waiting for something bad to happen so you can write about it, you know. So that's sort of what gets people's attention in the Bitcoin space. But, you know, I mean, the other problem is that, like, when about a year ago now, we were in a kind of another, you know, very high point in terms of the dollar exchange rate. And you get all these kind of novices that go, oh my God, I better get into Bitcoin. It's going nowhere but up. And they buy at the top, you know.
Right.
And then it starts to fall, and then they blame whatever article they just read that caused them to buy, or so they believe, and they feel like they've been ripped off. And then it falls out of the news, and they sell low, of course.
Right.
And then they forget about it. And until the next time there's another top, and they go, oh my God, I should have got into Bitcoin. I better get into it now. And they buy again at the top. And so on it goes. I mean, good investors get interested in technologies when people are not talking about them, when they're undervalued, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's why it's so hard to be a good investor, you know?
I think I remember seeing something, I forget if it was for 2013 or 2014, but someone put together a video. It was like the top most searched Google things, and one of them was, how do I buy Bitcoin? And then the next one was, how do I sell Bitcoin?
That's the way it works. One of the things that's a little bit funny about watching the way Bitcoin has developed is just to see the way a great technology enters into a real world space. It's not frictionless, you know? It's not like there's some technology god that descends from a cloud and hands, you know, lovingly a beautiful and complete, you know, package to humanity and says, here's your new technology. You know, it's just not the way it works. It enters in a crude form within a financial space that's filled with hysterias and mistakes, and involves a lot of competition and new players getting into the market and gradual bit by bit improvements and that sort of thing. This is the way real world technologies come to us, not in a completed form, but in a sort of bit by bit manner.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it'll be awesome to see it all coming together over the next year. I mean, we've been excited about the last year, and I think it can only get better.
Well,
so.
Let me tell you something that happened to me the other day. It was very interesting to me. I was in New Zealand, and I wanted to go on a helicopter ride. Because, of course, everybody wants to float around in a bubble in the middle of the air, right? Basically, that's the whole goal. So I did that, and they were accepting Bitcoin, and it was really exciting. So I paid for my helicopter ride with Bitcoin, and the whole time I was in Australia, I was having to think about the dollar exchange rate. So the New Zealand dollar is different from the US dollar, and as I began to start to pay, I realized, just kind of in a way that surprised me, that I didn't have to bother with that dollar to dollar exchange rate anymore. I could just pay in Bitcoin. And I realized this is really cool. Bitcoin is the same all over the world. It's a global currency. So it's just Bitcoin, you know, and that's just it. And I'm a little bit of this way, like things have to actually happen to me to actually penetrate my brain in a way. And I realized for the very first time what it means to have a global currency and to get rid of national currencies. It means we don't have to deal with these idiotic exchange rates and these different inflation rates between different central banks around the world and all the various national policies that affect the value of national currencies and so on. You know, Bitcoin lives entirely outside that ecosystem within its own structure. And the possibilities for global commerce and trade are like mind-boggling, actually. And I don't know that anybody's really written about that yet.
Right. I think there's all kinds of opportunity. And I've heard a couple people in the banking kind of sphere say that they're looking into it because it's, I mean, I know we're not a huge fan at all of banks and fiat currency, but it still has amazing potential and uses for moving money around. And the banks are interested in that. So
did you see that transaction that occurred a few days ago with that $80 million transaction that took place with an exchange fees of 4 cents, you know?
Right. Oh man.
Which is just mind boggling. I mean, usually you have to charge 2 to 3, 4% for any kind of movement of money. So, you know, that kind of stuff gets the attention of the world. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sure this happens to you too. I never get tired of using Bitcoin. Like every single time I use it, I always give a cheer and I always get a lift. It makes my day every single time. I love using Bitcoin. It's just so mind-blowing. And every time I just move money from here or get money from there, pay for something, I'm overwhelmed at just how incredibly cool it is. I mean, I've lived through a lot of technological transformations, like when I was a kid, used to have to buy vinyl records and then we moved to 8-track tapes and then cassette tapes and then CDs and then MP3s. And every upgrade was impressive, and notable and serious.
Yeah.
And exciting. But, none of this compares to just the sheer amazingness of Bitcoin relative to our existing technologies.
Right. Absolutely. It's huge. I don't know if there's much more to say other than it's just...
Well, and that's why I think it's going to be the future. And, this is what happens if you look back at the history of technology. Things are invented. Governments try to control them and try to regulate them. People are confused by it. But enough time goes by and the technology wins, and those who want to hold it back lose. That's just the rule. That's the way history has always worked. You can't stop a great idea. It's the most futile undertaking you can ever pursue, is just try to stop a great technology when humanity wants to use it. And we're just in the early stages of discovery right now, but here's the thing. I go to a lot of Bitcoin conferences. The smartest people I've ever known are deeply involved in this sector. It's mind-blowing to go to a Bitcoin conference. I mean, you could hear talk after talk after talk of some of the biggest geniuses you could ever encounter. And they're right there in front of you, and they're working in the Bitcoin space.
Oh, I know. It's been so much fun. We've only made it to a few of them, but yeah, they are absolutely amazing. So
one of the other things I've noticed over the last year is that, you hear people speculate about what's possible in the Bitcoin space, and it sounds a little like science fiction, but if you wait enough time, it becomes a reality, And so I'm beginning to kind of trust the speculative entrepreneurs and their intuitions about these things. A good example is multi-sig, right? I mean, so a year ago, nobody had multi-sig, but a lot of people were talking about it. And now it's a common part of many user interfaces on the major exchanges. And anybody can use it. And it's getting easier to use now, too.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people said 2014 is the year of multi-sig. And, it didn't work out as much as some people might have liked, but it still has been a huge deal. So
that's funny. I at the beginning of January 1st last year, I don't remember too many people saying 2014 is the year of multi-sig, but you must have some really cool friends. I love to go to a New Year's Eve party where everybody's toasting the inauguration of the year of multi-sig,
Yeah.
And 2015 is going to be the year of smart contracting, right?
Right. Yeah, well, we'll see how it all goes. That'll be exciting. Well, hey, Mr. Tucker, one final thing. I mean, yeah, we definitely want to focus on Bitcoin, but I know Liberty Me has been a huge thing in your life too, and I think it's actually less than a year old, right? So can you just tell us?
No, it's only about 6 months live now, and we've learned so much. I feel it's wonderful to be in the entrepreneurial space because when you first get into a technology like Liberty.me, you have to anticipate what users want, but you cannot consider yourself to be infallible. You have to be open to see what the data reveal, and how people use it and what fires people up. So we've learned so much in the last 6 months. It's easy to look back and go, oh, we should have done this. We shouldn't have done that. But that's what you learn. You learn in the course of enterprise. And the important thing is to change and to do it in a way that's consistent with consumers' desires. And so before the end of the year, I think it's going to be within the next couple of weeks, we're coming out with a brand new homepage and a new design that's going to be far more intuitive. And it's not going to require so much digging around. And
all right,
we really feel like we've responded to users, and I just love it. I love building things, and I love changing the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, we definitely hope that things go amazing with Liberty Me, and hope that things are really exciting with Bitcoin over the next year and forever, really. So, hey, this was Mr. Jeffrey Tucker. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your podcast, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Day 6 of our special anniversary series. Our hashtag for today is YMB Liberty. Send a tweet to @UMe and BTC with the hashtag YMB Liberty, and you'll be entered to win some awesome prizes, including Bitcoin, silver, and more. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Rollin.io, for supporting our giveaways and this entire event. And we'll see you tomorrow for Day 7.